Welcome back. Today we're really getting into how conversations actually, work. We're going beyond just memorizing phrases. We want to unpack the hidden rules, the sort of invisible engine running underneath real talk.
Right. And if you think a casual chat is just, words happening randomly, well, think again. You're actually part of this incredibly complex system governed by rules. We've looked at everything from guides on ordering food to deep academic studies on dialogue. And the mission is to show you how every single chat follows these intricate social agreements.
Yeah, that's the core tension, isn't it? You've got language learning telling you what you should say.
The prescriptive stuff.
Exactly. And then linguistics looking at what people actually do say and maybe more importantly, why they say it that way, why they bend the rules. We're trying to bridge that gap for you today, give you something tangible. So let's start somewhere practical. A situation that feels pretty scripted, but actually hides some fascinating social dynamics. Ordering food. In English, maybe.
Oh, a restaurant exchange is perfect. It's a very structured dialogue, It forces the staff and the customer into this kind of preset dance.
Okay, so imagine the waiter comes over, asks if you're ready, and you need more time. You might say something like, "We need another minute." And our sources point out something interesting here, that minute almost never means 60 seconds, does it? Especially not in a busy place.
Right. It's like this unspoken agreement. A bit of pragmatic shorthand. The waiter gets it. A minute means, realistically, maybe 5-7 minutes. Enough time. You don't have to awkwardly ask for exactly 5 minutes. The language is polite, it's efficient, and everyone understands the hidden meaning. It works.
And then you get to the end of the meal. It's not over yet, is it? You say, "Check, please," or maybe, "May I have the bill, please?" But then comes this whole other layer of social negotiation about paying.
Yeah, it's never just about the money itself. It's about the relationships playing out. Are you going to treat your friends? Which might signal generosity or maybe even a subtle kind of dominance. Or do you go through the, let's be honest, sometimes awkward process of asking to split the bill? That needs a whole different conversation with the waiter. Even these really simple transactions are like tiny negotiation routines. Little dances.
It really does sound like even asking for the bill follows some kind of hidden script. Is there like a bigger blueprint for all conversations, something beyond just restaurants?
There is, and linguists call it turn-taking. This is the real structural layer, the absolute foundation. It's that constant, incredibly quick back and forth where the speaker becomes a listener and the listener becomes the speaker, like passing a hot potato, conversationally speaking.
Okay, but if the basic rule is just you talk, then I talk, why do real conversations sometimes feel so messy? Like people interrupting or talking over each other? What messes up that neat model?
Well, that's where being human comes in. The sort of classic theory, the one linguists figured out back in the 70s, gives us the ideal system. But it gets immediately complicated by really two huge things. First, society and culture. How you talk changes massively based on who you're talking to. Social rank, how close you are. Friend talk is different from boss talk. More intimate, maybe more overlap allowed with friends.
I get that. You definitely talk faster, interrupt more with your friends than you would in, say, a job interview.
Exactly. And the second big factor is psychology. Your state of mind completely changes the rhythm. If you're anxious or excited, you might talk really fast, maybe interrupt more. But if you're thoughtful, maybe more pauses. And those pauses, those interruptions, they kind of chop up that perfect theoretical back and forth.
Right. So how do we actually manage all this in real life? When I want to signal, okay, your turn, or when I'm thinking and I really need to keep talking, what are the tools?
Well, to give up the turn, to yield it, the signals are usually pretty clear. Asking a question's a big one. Or using someone's name, an address term. And silence, a noticeable pause. That's maybe the strongest signal. Okay, I'm done. Over to you.
And what if I'm mid-thought? I don't want someone jumping in, but I need a second. How do I hold the turn?
That's where fillers really shine. You can use a silent pause, but like you said, that can be ambiguous. The other person might think you've finished. So much clearer are the filled pauses. Those are your sounds. We've all seen it, right? Someone going, because they haven't quite found the word yet, but they definitely don't want you to interrupt. Those sounds basically signal, hold on, my brain's loading, don't take the mic.
And if you actually listen to people talk, I mean, really listen to it's full of those O's and, O's and likes, all that messy stuff we're talking about. But when you read a movie script or like a dialogue in a language textbook, it's all cleaned up. It sounds totally fake if you take out all those markers.
Exactly. The messy parts are what make it sound real. And linguists actually, study these little bits, these high-frequency chunks. They call them markers, fillers, hedges, things like, kind of, sort of, actually, a little bit.
And they're not just verbal tics, right? They're doing real work in the conversation.
Absolutely. They have important pragmatic functions. They can hold the floor while you think, like we said. They can also refer to shared knowledge, like saying, assumes the other person does know, or they clarify things. But maybe their most interesting job is hedging, softening what you're saying. It can be about saving your own face, or maybe saving the other person's face. Saying, I think we should go left is way less direct, less confrontational than just stating, we must go left.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the research you mentioned found some very surprising differences in how people use these tools depending on the situation. Tell us about that study in the academic debates.
Right, this is fascinating. It shows how the same linguistic tools can be used for completely different social aims. So researchers looked at these academic debating classes. They found that female students and lecturers tended to use more of those lexical hedges, phrases like, I believe, or we think, or in my opinion. The interpretation was that this helped create a more sort of welcoming, collaborative vibe, signaling politeness, maybe tentativeness, avoiding direct confrontation.
Okay, so the hedges act like a social lubricant there.
Oh.
Or maybe a signal of deference.
Kind of, yeah. But interestingly, the male students in the same setting, they had a higher average use of intensifiers, words like inherently, actively, extremely, and also sometimes super polite forms like thank you or could I just say thing. But these weren't necessarily used for deference. Often the analysis suggested they were used strategically to sound more assertive, to emphasize their points more forcefully, almost to project dominance.
Wow.
It's a neat insight into how language isn't neutral. It can be used even unconsciously to project confidence or authority.
Which brings us nicely to screenwriting, actually. How writers try to capture that realism, that messiness. In drama, the dialogue has to feel true, right? True to the character's background, their personality, what makes them tick. But often, the most realistic thing is for a character not to say exactly what they mean.
That's the soul of subtext, isn't it? Characters rarely just state their desires plainly. They say what they think will help them get what they want. And that gap between what's said and what's meant creates the tension. The audience often knows or senses what's really going on underneath.
And silence. Screenwriters know how powerful silence can be. Just letting a moment hang there, a beat or a pause after something big is said, or something cutting. That silence can tell you so much more about the emotional impact than pages of dialogue. Silence is definitely a conversational move.
And we can see these exact same dynamics, these same principles about managing turns and using language strategically. Even if we go way back, we can look at structured dramatic texts like Shakespeare and see the universality of these rules.
Okay, Shakespeare. Let's connect this back to Hamlet. How does something like turn-taking show up in a 400-year-old play?
Well, first, you've got the basic difference between monologue and dialogue, right? A monologue is one person speaking for a long time. The listener is just listening, almost like reading aloud. Dialogue is that quick back and forth, the turn-taking we've been discussing. But even the famous monologues in a play, like to be or not to be, they exist within a larger conversational context. They're still structured utterances.
Right. Even if Hamlet's talking to himself, it's performative, intended within the world of the play.
Precisely. And then you see specific techniques, like insertion sequences. This is basically where one conversational pair happens inside another one. Hamlet does this a lot. He'll be talking about his uncle, maybe, and he'll throw in these rhetorical questions. They don't need an immediate answer. They act like a kind of conversational speed bump. They delay the main point, build tension, make the listener wait. It's a way to manage the flow and make a stronger impact.
Huh? That's clever. Using questions not for answers, but to control the timing. What about listener feedback? The little noises people make when listening.
Yeah, even that's part of the structure. So when Hamlet is really laying into his mother, Gertrude, the analysis shows her responses are often short overlaps. Things like, no more, or, oh, speak to me no more. These aren't really adding new points to the argument. They're signaling her reaction, her indignation, the emotional impact of his words. It's pure back-channeling, showing she's affected.
So it's her psychological state sort of bursting through the conversational rules.
Exactly. And one more specific technique from Hamlet is triple reiteration. You see it in phrases like list, list, oh list, or when he's asked what he's reading and says words, words, words. It's used for huge emphasis, or sometimes to show this intense eagerness or focus. It's a way to really hammer a point home, much like repetition is used today in speeches or ads.
Okay, so pulling it all together. Whether you're just trying to order coffee, or you're in a heated debate, or even reading Shakespeare, The big takeaway seems to be that dialogue isn't random at all. It's a system.
It absolutely is. Every single word, every pause, every every hedge, like sort of, every forceful word, like inherently, it's all responding to the social situation, the speaker's emotions, their goals in that moment. Understanding that underlying system, that messy reality, actually gives you way more communicative power than just memorizing phrases.
And maybe a final thought, especially if you're interested in writing or just observing people. Think about really stylized dialogue, like a super fast-paced Aaron Sorkin script or maybe Quentin Tarantino's dialogue. It might not sound natural in the sense of having lots of ums and likes.
Right. But its brilliance often lies in its consistency. It's true to the world and the characters within that specific story. If a character speaks in that heightened way consistently, it creates its own kind of naturalism, its own reality. It feels right for them. So the real test isn't just counting the fillers, it's asking, does this dialogue feel authentic to the person speaking it in this situation?
So a challenge for you listening, next time you're talking to someone, try to notice the hidden mechanics. Who's holding the floor? Who's trying to yield? What little words or pauses are they using to manage the conversation?
You might just find you're part of a much more intricate, fascinating linguistic dance than you ever realized.